It's time for more Manifesting Original Rich Bitch Experiences. Each week, we're talking travel, wellness, and millennial musings with a level of refinement. What level? It fucking depends. I'm your host, Ava Bilkey. Welcome back to the More Pod. Today, we get to talk about astrology, one of my favorite topics. And to help us out with this, we have guest KJ Atlas joining us. Now, if this is your first time meeting KJ, she is a whisperer of the ancient language of time and nature, also known as astrology. KJ decodes all the complexities that come along with astrology and breaks things down into useful, meaningful, and practical guidance through one-on-one coaching work. And this really helps you optimize every aspect of your life. KJ has been such an incredible resource for me. She's now an incredible friend of mine, and I am so thrilled to dig into another layer of astrology. And so today we are going to be talking all about astrology for business. KJ Atlas, welcome to the More Pod.
Ava, thank you so much for having me. This is my favorite place to be on any given day of the week. So I'm so glad to be back here with you.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. I love that. I'm loving that you love more and we love you. So this is just perfect. Last time we spoke, we had a really cool conversation about locational astrology and really using astrology to find the best places for us around the world to live, work, play, date, etc. And I also think about, the other applications of astrology and really bringing it into other aspects of life. And so today, entrepreneurs are in for a treat because we are going to talk about how astrology can be used to guide us in business. And so I have so many questions. Let's just get into it. First and foremost, can you tell us why we should be using the tools of astrology to really help us in business?
You know what I think people really get wrong is that astrology is this like belief system. And if it's not that, then it is a meme, something really funny to send your friend from CoStar or Sanctuary World pages, which don't get me wrong, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like junk food astrology, but it is so much more than that. That would be like 2% of what this is. And it is the oldest time tracking tool. And that's one application. And I love it for that. To figure out what time cycle you're in, what is the climate of the time cycle you're in, and what everyone else is in, and what you should be doing instead of going against the natural rhythms of time. And the other thing that I love is that it is an introspective tool, kind of like a Myers-Briggs, but so much more nuance. I love information, and it gives us a ton of information to tell us what is our purpose, how we should go about achieving that purpose, when it's likely to come to fruition, and things we can do in our day-to-day life to just generally make this time here on Earth better. And that honestly just scratches the surface about what astrology can do for you.
Wow. I love how you gave that comparison of like a lot of the memes and the social content that we see about astrology is kind of like the junk food of astrology. That's definitely going to stick for me because I know exactly what you're talking about. And I too love that astro junk food. Like that's just fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. It's so complex. And that's why I love speaking with you about these topics because it is one of those things where it's like once you kind of open the can of worms, we can go like really far down the rabbit hole. And it's just so incredible to even go beyond like, your sun sign. Like, I think that's another example of like how it's most commonly accessed. It's like,
Yeah,
you helped me understand we're so much more than that.
totally.
I love what you say about really just going within the rhythms.
It's like surfing, even though I don't do that, and I would probably never do that. But it's the idea of like, there's a good wave coming. I have friends who surf, and they're like, oh, waves are good. Like, I'm going to catch the good wave and
Mhm.
it's going to carry me all the way in. But if the waves are not good, aka the time period, the time cycle isn't the best, like during a retrograde, you're going to
Mhm.
be like trying to catch that wave, aka launch whatever it is that you're doing, and you're going to keep finding yourself like redoing it and fumbling until that good wave comes, aka the non-retrograde period.
And we're in a couple retrogrades right now. So we're facing our own challenges of like maybe not riding the wave fully, but for good cause.
Mhm.
I think that's so interesting. And I think part of what feels so tricky at times, like I love the concept. Like I'm so on board with like, yeah, in due time, like cycles of nature, seasons. It's so hard in the lives we live today to honor that.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to just get into breaking down the ways in which we can try to attempt to honor this within the business setting, because I find myself getting into situations where it's like, well, I'm planning my day or my calendar based off of a lot of external, inputs. From what I understand, I'm creating more friction for myself sometimes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And something else I know that you mentioned as it relates to really using this tool and applying it to business or location or anything is like alignment. So, how can we become more aligned using astrology? Like, what are some of these key points that we can look to from the business perspective?
Let's talk about the fun stuff first. And the first
Yes.
thing that comes to mind and like how to be more aligned is like, I think that you should be able to show up to work and be yourself.
Yes.
And something that we talk about a lot in the US especially is like this idea of like what is professional, and you hear a lot of people talking about like code switching.
Mm.
And there's
Hmm.
so many different ways that people do that in order to show up and appear professional, and I think it's a load of bullshit.
Yes.
And we should be able to show up and be colorful people and have tattoos if we want them, and to speak in a way that connects to people, because I think that a lot of people are over this rigid way of doing business that our parents and grandparents did,
Hmm.
and these old outdated structures. And one of the major problems in the US is that we should probably be living a more European lifestyle when it comes to like schedules and like leisure and embracing family and recreation and fun. And
Yes.
we're workaholics here.
Totally.
And that's why astrology, it can be such a powerful tool, because it helps you to figure out when is actually a good pattern to take that vacation. I know people in LA who do not take PTO at all, and I think that is insane.
Hmm.
And so you can use this as a tool, like when is your peak periods for launching, and when should you sign off, do a social media detox, and not answer emails, and put up your responder and say, I will get back to you at some point, but it's not going to be now. Boundary.
Yes. I love how you say about bringing your whole self to work, and it could be inside of a corporation, it could be just in your own entrepreneurial endeavors. It's like we've gone through so many filters, right? Like we're filtering ourselves to fit into these boxes to your point appear quote unquote professional, whatever the hell that
Mhm.
means. And what happens when we all go through all these filters, I've observed, is it's like, well, now there's nothing left.
Yeah.
Like how are you going to stand out with a selection of, five people who offer the same offering as you?
Yeah.
It's through who you are. If we suppress that, it's like no one even know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like the whole idea of like niching comes to mind, and people are so obsessed with like what's my niche? And it's
Hmm.
like you are the niche.
Yes.
You are it. It's not like this thing you're supposed to find. It's like this, you peel back all the layers and strip down to find yourself and the authenticity that's been there from the beginning. Usually our childhood is very indicative of this. What were you drawn to? What was your personality like before all the trauma happened? And you
Hmm.
decided to become something else as a coping mechanism. Who were you? Because that's going to give you a lot of insight to who you really are still when you decondition and shake off all the nonsense that we were told to become. Because, there's no blueprint to entrepreneurship. Like, there's all these books of like, here's how to work 4 hours a week and who knows what. But there's really
Yeah.
no blueprint.
I've read that one. 4 Hour Work Week. I was like, sign me up.
Yeah, I
Let's
read that one too,
go. But it's very
bro.
it doesn't leave room for astrology.
No. And that's the thing is like everyone has a unique working pattern based on these astrological seasons. That's what it is. It's just seasons.
Mm,
Like it's literally seasons of the year. Like when you think about spring, summer, fall, and winter, and then the zodiac signs are like micro seasons. So there's
sure.
like 12 seasons a year, but we all interact with these different 12 seasons in our own way based on our own chart. So in a way, it's like our birth chart is our entrepreneurial blueprint. It's our life blueprint because the two things are not separate.
Mm,
If you're doing life right, your business and yourself are not separate.
wow. Our blueprint, wait, our business, the blueprint
Our
is in the birth
business
chart.
blueprint. Yeah. Yeah. People are like, there's no blueprint. Yeah, there's not, but there's a blueprint that is your birth chart. And that holds the key to everything.
That's incredible. And that's unique to each and every one of us.
Yeah. You are a special little cocktail. I was explaining this to a woman yesterday who I did a reading and she did not even know about the sun, moon, and rising. And that's one of my favorite places to start with people. It's like she knew that she was like a Taurus.
Hmm.
So I was like, yeah, but okay, think about like cocktails. Cocktails are fun. So Taurus might be vodka. But
Yep.
if you add tomato juice or if you add cranberry juice, you're getting two very different cocktails. And that's like the influence of like your moon sign and your rising sign. And so a Bloody Mary is very different from a Cosmopolitan, but they're both made with vodka. So like you're both Taurus, but Hitler's a Taurus and my sweet grandma's a Taurus. So we're talking about two very different Taurus people. Like you are a whole chart.
That is such a great way to put it. That, like right there, the vodka tastes really different in cranberry juice versus tomato juice or in like olive juice. My God, like
Mm-hmm.
I love that. You just clarified so much about like the influences of like all the pieces of the birth chart. That's gold.
You're like an espresso martini vodka because you have double Taurus.
I do have double Taurus. Is the Aquarius the espresso?
Totally. Like wired and rich and dark. Yeah.
Okay, then what are you?
Oh, I'm probably one of those. I think I'm a naked and famous made with like mezcal and like orange juice.
Ooh, I've never heard of
Have you ever
that.
had those? It has
No,
chartreuse. Chartreuse is my favorite liqueur. Like it's just ridiculous. Or I would be one of those cocktails that has like cotton candy on the top that like melts into it.
totally. I have had one
Utterly
of those.
ridiculous.
I have had one of those. I know what you mean. Wow, that is so fun. So, given that we all are our own special cocktails and we all have our own blueprints, can you help the good people understand some of the applications here when it comes to business and why they might want to use this information?
Yeah,
I feel like I've got a few different categories and we can go through each one.
sure.
For example, how could looking to your own birth chart help really like influence what kind of business you start? So maybe you know you want to be an entrepreneur or you want to try something new, but you're not quite sure. Is astrology something that we could lean on to kind of guide us into what we should be doing?
Absolutely. And the thing about it is that it's symbolic and a little bit subjective. So there's some leeway here. So you can kind of see the themes of like what it is that that person is supposed to do in their day to day. So what is the structure of the business supposed to look like? And then what are they supposed to be known for from a legacy perspective and a reputation perspective? And then if they're bringing their whole self, how does their sun or their moon and all these other things influence that? And like one example, I think about a client who was spent so much of her life working in healthcare and she did care about that. But there was this other thing too that she wasn't integrating yet. And she had this desire to design and create. And she had Venus, which is this planet of love and beauty and aesthetics, in the point of her chart that that's supposed to be kind of what she's known for. And so even though she had a career in healthcare for a long part of her life, she was eventually destined to step into this other thing that's more creative. She did it on the side for a long time, and it was floral design. And
Oh,
so you can look at some of the signatures in her chart and see how she can best bring that purpose and legacy to life, and what are some possibilities, and which one might make the most sense, and which one you're drawn towards. Because I would never be the type of person who starts like an auto mechanic business. It's just not there.
sure.
But creating an astrology business that's about applying things to your life and creating more balance and beauty and aesthetics. When I say, oh, today the moon is in Aquarius, eat key lime pie, the whole point is to romance your life. And I have a Libra midheaven. So that's in alignment. And I think you can use this blueprint as like, what should you do and what kind of things you should be doing on a day-to-day basis? What should it look like? And
Mm,
what's the point? What's the underlying mission? Because it's like, yeah, I have an astrology business, but like, what is the mission?
mm-hmm.
How is it different from anyone else's astrology business? Because there's a million of them.
Sure. And that's kind of where that bringing your whole self to what you do
Mm-hmm.
is part of what makes your business yours, and it makes it unique and
Yeah.
special. And because someone may be gravitating towards you just based off of, I don't know, your vibe. I mean, who wouldn't? But like, there's certain things. It's like I think of like, how do you pick a hairstylist, or how do you pick a personal trainer? How do you choose an astrologer? It is like really just leaning into the way people show up.
People love people.
Yeah.
And if you show people who you really are, then you get a better chance of people being like, wow, I really love who you are, and fully leaning into that. When I first started my business, I did the opposite, and I picked the template that I thought everyone wanted me to do. So I know firsthand what doesn't work when you do the thing that you think everyone else is doing. And it was beautiful. It was designed well, but it was beige. Can you imagine? I had a beige and white business, like big dumb hat white business, because I saw all the spiritual coaches doing that. And I was like, oh, this is what you're supposed to do. And I got to a point one day and I was like, I hate this. I can't stand looking at my website anymore.
Yeah.
This is not real, because my closet is throwing up rainbows.
And now your brand is beautiful. It's orange and magenta and green and all sorts of great colors.
Yeah, it's rich. It's
Yeah.
jewel tones. And it's so much more authentic and visible. That was a thing too. Is like, if you're trying to stay invisible, it's much easier to just pick a template and go with it. It
Mm.
is much harder to be yourself, but it is so much more worthwhile, because you're going to attract the right people and actually live up to what you're supposed to be doing, instead of just getting by with a template that was designed by someone else based on their design.
Oh, that's such a great point. I feel like similar to you, I've experienced sort of launching my business in one way, again, based off of
Mm-hmm.
like, which is, when you don't know anything, it's smart to do research. It's smart to look around a little bit and just kind of like see what's out there. But I wouldn't say I launched beige, but I definitely launched like really like structured and rigid. And, my social media consultancy was like very corporate sterile, which was funny
Mm,
because that was me fitting in that box for 10 years prior. And that's what I
yeah.
thought success looked like. Fast forward a few years, I think the podcast is a great example. The rebrand of the More Pod, where it was like, you know what does this look like in my mind, in my heart? And then, like, how do I bring that forward? It's giving more is more. Like, it started out in that very sterile space, too. And, like, the
Yeah.
artwork and whatever was fine, but now I feel like we've got these crazy collages full of diamonds and jewels and like travel and like all the elements are there. And it just
Yes.
feels more true to who I am and like what I want this space to be. When I think about like how we get here, you on your journey and me on my journey, it's almost hard to describe. But if somebody was looking to move into more alignment, where do we even start?
It brings me back to this point that astrology is like the quick route. It's like energetic surgery. So, like, we go to therapy for years and years and years to identify the problem, but astrology can help us identify the problem so then we can start working on it in a 1 hour session
Love that.
if we're willing to go there. And so, with our business, it's like you don't have to do what Ava and I did, which is like decondition over years and years and years to try to like get to the root of it. Because once I realized this and I was like, why am I not honoring my chart?
Mm.
Why am I not honoring the fact that I'm a Gemini with a Sagittarius rising, which is just oozing orangey, juicy, jewel tone, rainbow abundance? It's chaotic and it's all over the place and it's supposed to be. And so
Hmm.
it's like, why am I not honoring this? And so you can skip all the steps that we went through and just get to the root of it and not have to course correct.
Oh, that would have been nice. That would
You
have
know, it's
been
so funny
nice.
when I think about like your old brand.
Yeah.
It's nice. Like there's nothing wrong with it. Like it's
No.
giving Silicon Valley boss babe. But your new brand is like rock star who just woke up at Chateau. And it's
Yes.
so cool.
That's exactly where I want to stay this fall. Like the fact that you just pinpoint those details and I'm like, yes, that's how I know it's aligned.
It's so aligned.
And it feels so good to get there.
Yeah.
So, what comes like is it the chicken or the egg in terms of like leaning on the blueprint to really help us decide like what we're meant to be doing? Like obviously the example of your client who was in medical but like also had this like passion around something that was really more aligned. Did
Mhm.
did they come to you knowing that they needed that pivot, or was this sort of revealed within the chart after looking at it?
Usually two different things happen. Sometimes people are in the space of like, I know I want to start a business and this is kind of the loose idea. Usually people do have the loose idea.
Mhm.
And then we carve it out together and sculpt it and say, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is what your audience is. This is who you're supposed to talk to. This is the purpose. This is the feel of the brand. And then here is your ideal flow and work schedule for every year and for the week and the time cycle you're in. That's one scenario.
Mhm.
And the other is the person who's like, I have been doing this and something's not working. Something doesn't feel right and I need a pivot and I need help cleaning the house and figuring out what it is so we can get down to the root of it.
Mm. And both ways put us at
Mm-hmm.
a better place.
Yeah, because I kind of did the second one with myself. I was like, this is not right. Something's not flowing. How can I use this tool that I help other people with location? Because that was primarily what I was doing is the locational piece and using time cycles in like a general sense for personal life. And I was like, this can be helping people with business, which is the root of how we change culture. And so if we want to change culture and we want people to slow down and have more siestas and tapas, then we need to start with our economic structure and our businesses, even with small businesses.
Whew. You are speaking to my FOMO around not having a hot girl summer in Europe right now.
I didn't either, so
I know.
same.
It's been weighing on my heart because we're in August right now. And I'm like, August is not for working. August is not a month for working. August is a month for
No,
tapas. Like, what are we
but
doing?
it does make me feel better that I saw a friend post that she's in Bordeaux and it's 90 some degrees and nowhere has AC.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like there's no bug nets on the windows. So I do love some of those American conveniences, but I wish we had walkable cities and I wish we had more time off like they do in Montreal. Like our beach towns in North Carolina growing up were overrun with
Oh,
French Canadians because they took the whole month of July off.
that's
Can you imagine?
incredible.
Your whole city takes July off.
I understand because when I started out in corporate, I was working for a hotel brand and we had offices in the States, we had office in Belgium, and we had an office in Singapore. And all of my colleagues would totally disappear for 6 to 8 weeks every summer. And it was just the norm. And nobody except the US office like had a problem with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 2 weeks of PTO. I remember my first job and I was like, oh my God, I have 10 days of PTO. My family lives on the other side of the country. So I'm supposed to use that to go visit them for holidays. But I'm also like supposed to be a hot girl jet setting. Like, how does this make any sense?
It's a crime. It's an absolute crime. But we have to change it. And it sounds like we start with changing our own business structure and our own patterns and it's
Yeah.
hard, but I do believe it's worth the work.
Yeah.
You gave an example around looking at your daily calendar. I think about other timing aspects, like how can we use astrology to influence timing of our business activities?
Well, there's larger scale ones that would occur throughout the year. Like if you recall, October of 2022 through February of 2023, that was the most monstrous, slow, lacking momentum winter that I've experienced in a long time. And a lot of people feel the same way because we had this massive Mars retrograde. So
Mm,
it wasn't a good time to keep pushing ahead if things are getting stuck. It's like trying to drive a car that's stuck in the mud. You just gotta wait for stuff to dry out or get a
mm,
tow truck. You know, it's not going to
yeah.
work. And then the other piece of that is like the more micro scale things, like the lunar cycles, which I use very, very strongly in my personal life and in business. I try to launch things or begin things at the new moon.
Mm,
Or if it's a program and we're starting something, the full moon can be okay because there's a lot of momentum, like, oh, we're finally at this culminating point. But I seldom do things that are new during the waning moon phase right before the new moon because energy is so low. There's a weakness. It's an inward period of polishing, revising, and pivoting onto the next. You won't see me launch anything in that last week of the lunar cycle.
that's so interesting. And so we would have just passed that little phase for this month, right?
Yeah, so today is the day after the new moon.
Hmm.
So the week of the new moon leading up to the first quarter, and then that first quarter leading up to the full moon is like a growth period of like a things are accelerating. So you want to catch the wave.
Yes.
And then the second half of the cycle, you want to polish and then that let things die down so you can take a breath before you inhale again.
That's so fascinating. I've been applying a lot of this because I absorb a lot of information from you. And I'm like, yes, okay. So we're doing this and we're doing that. And I have been applying it in my own life. And sometimes I understand it. Like, the new moon, full moon, I feel like I'm familiar with that now. And again, there's so
Mhm.
many pieces. When it comes to other things like occasional events, I'm still very much in this like trust it and find out phase. So, for example, one of the pieces of guidance you shared with me recently was like, we all know we're in this Venus retrograde period. Like, crazy things are happening with relationships. But, like, before we get to the Mercury retrograde, there's this little like breath, and there was a Mercury Kazemi moment. And you're like, this would be like a nice moment to plant a seed. And so that was the day in which I chose to relaunch the Avaverse, my new personal
Mhm.
brand. I feel like I planted the seed and now I get to just watch it grow. But do you have any like wild stories, like crazy cool things that they don't even have to be wild? I guess it could just be like a normal thing. But an example of using this energy and having like incredible results.
One that comes to mind is I'm a really big fan of goal setting with the new moon. And if there's anything, if you're listening and you're like, I don't know much about astrology, I might know my big three. My advice is don't worry about all the other things. Don't get caught up in the asteroids. Understand your big three, understand it thoroughly as deep as you can, and then track the moon cycles. Everything else can come later. The
Mm,
moon is the most primal thing, it's the closest thing to us. If we didn't have internet calculators and telescopes, we would be able to at least loosely track the moon as long as
mm,
light pollution isn't horrible. But we can still see it. Like even in smoggy LA, we can still see the moon.
Yes, thank
So get
God.
to know it. So on that note, goal setting and intentions, you'll probably hear like new moon wishes and intention setting, but goals are so practical and tangible, and I love that. So if we set a goal to say like, I really want this to happen in a month's time or in 6 months' time, like this greater moon cycle, just calculate when's the full moon 6 months from that date. There's a list online, you can find it. The things that you put into motion at new moons every single month will come together somewhat effortlessly. Once you kind of nudge the domino, the rest will follow.
Mm.
And so, a crazy example I have, a couple of years ago, I put out the intention that I wanted an opportunity to talk about locational astrology in a big media outlet so that more people would understand this and I could help more people. And so the brand could grow. So I did that at the Aquarius new moon, February.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I'm writing horoscopes, 20,000 words a week, killing my back and fingers, and just wondering, how am I going to pivot out of this to really take the business truly full time in a thriving sense? Well, I didn't quit. It got ripped out from underneath me, and I was scared.
Hmm.
I was horrified. And then a week later or so, it was the full moon in Aquarius. So that wish that I put out, that goal that I set in February was coming together. And that was when the Astro Twins published my article on astrocartography.
Hell yeah.
And everything changed.
Look at that. Wow. That's an incredible example.
That kind of stuff happens a lot. Every month I'll post on my story like, it's the full moon, go back 6 months to this date, what was going on. And it's amazing to see what a lot of people were saying, like, oh, I really wanted this to happen and now I have this. Or like, I was thinking about moving and now I just moved into this new place. I signed this new lease. Like everything happened full circle. And it's like a check-in point, something for you to anchor to so
Yeah.
that you can track your progress and celebrate your wins. Because there we go back to romance and celebrating. We need to set goals so that we have something to celebrate.
Yes. And we need to celebrate because it's the will to live some days. I think that's I think that's so interesting, just the timing cycles. And sounds like if we're looking for a place to start, the moon is like the best access point here.
Yeah.
When it comes to where our work can take place, whether it's a storefront business or an online business, how can astrology help influence where we should be and like what we should be doing?
You know, it's funny. The first time I thought about this was when I was in astrology school in Portland, and we were looking at one another's charts and we were talking about career destiny. And I was contemplating taking a job at a very famous astrology website that would require me to take a bus in the Oregon rain every single day. Like it was in person.
Oh,
And I wanted to work in astrology so bad that I was thinking about doing it. And we were looking at my chart. And someone said, you know, you have you have all of this like Taurus in your 6th house and you have a Cancer moon. It makes me think that you would actually do so much better working at home. I was like, you're right. I do work so much better working at home because I was already working at home at that point. I had an agency job working
okay.
at home. And I was like, that makes so much sense. And then there's someone like my partner who's like so extroverted and has started thriving since leaving working from home and going to an office that's communal, and it's like a co-working space and there's people in and out and it's like a kitchen. Like there's just so much going on. I would feel so overstimulated. I
Yeah.
want to wear comfy clothes and I want to take a break and take a walk in the sun and go to yoga class and like work at random periods of time. And
Mm-hmm.
you can see those things in alignment with the chart.
That's so interesting. So, what piece of the chart is that tied to? Is there certain placements or?
A couple things I would look at is what your moon sign needs. You know, is it like an extroverted moon? Is it an introverted moon? Is it social? That's a big part of it. Like, how social is your chart? And it's not just, are you introvert or extrovert, but like, what is the capacity for socializing? And that requires a conversation and like examining a couple of different parts of the chart. A lot of people who are extremely extroverted, people who are online all the time, who are public figures, are going to have a ton of the planets in their chart in the upper half.
Mm,
And someone who craves more of a private life, slower life, maybe working from home by themselves, might have a bulk of it in the bottom.
interesting.
Personally, mine's kind of spread out. So I do feel like an ambivert. Catch me on a good day, I will go to all the parties, but I also like to sit at home and do nothing and be completely alone. And so that would be one consideration. I might also look at like what your sixth house. So there's 12 houses of a chart divided into different areas of life. The sixth house is like your day-to-day routines and what your day-to-day life looks like. And so mine being Taurus ruled would imply that I might like to sloth around and, do a lot of self-care and move at a slower pace instead of rushing to commute, meeting, structured lunch break. I
Mm.
can do okay with structure, but it needs to be slow and at my pace, and I would rather feel cozy. Like when I worked in an office, I had a salt lamp on my desk, I had blankets, I would take my heels off and wear slippers at the desk. Like that's some Taurus sixth house shit.
I also had a salt lamp at my desk.
Taurus rising.
Yes. And a blanket because it was always cold as
Taurus
hell.
moon. Yeah. So you get it, because
Yes.
that's another thing. Think about the moon. So your Taurus moon, like you
Yeah.
need cozies too.
Hmm. But then somewhere in the mix, I get bored still too.
Hmm.
Like I need my things, but then I also need to be like having a very novel experience.
So you could probably do well with like a hybrid scenario where
Yeah.
you would work in coffee shops or co-working space a couple of days a week, or maybe we would take more one-on-one meetings. Because I'm kind of the same, but I take so many one-on-one calls that it checks off the socializing box in a
Oh,
way.
yeah. Hmm.
But if I didn't, I would go insane.
That just brings like a random example to mind, but I think just one on one coaching in general, that is not for everybody.
No.
It's like on the surface, it might seem like it, but not everybody likes to have that much. Not that they don't like to, but like my personal experience with it is like when I first launched my business, I had a coaching side and I had a consulting side. And what I found was after trying out the one on ones, for some reason, like I was just so depleted from doing
Mm.
that. And it wasn't because I didn't love being with people one on one, but just like something about that structure and the like scale of it just totally wiped me out.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, And so it's like, okay, go back to the blueprint. Like, let's, pivot, make it special to you, not to what everyone else is doing, because not everything works for everybody.
Totally. I came up with a client this week too. We were talking about doing one-on-one work, and she had a ton of stuff in, she had Gemini and like all these things in the seventh house, which is like others and partnership and like one-on-one partnership. And I was like, do you do a lot of one-on-one work? And she was like, yeah, I'm a therapist. And I was like, do you like the one-on-one work? She's like, yeah, I do. She's like, but I would love to be able to do more groups also. She had a lot of third house, which would be like groups and community. And so like what works for her is like a hybrid approach, so she doesn't waste all of her energy doing one-on-ones, but that's still an important part of her business, and she will always do like one or two one-on-ones a week at least.
Mm,
But also building out this group idea, because that's going to support the part of her that needs to move more into that community space. But she's never going to abandon the one-on-one because that makes sense for that chart.
totally. And once you dig into it, like there's just so many like components that can be aligned.
Yeah.
Something that I'm really vibing with lately is just like alignment and align and align. And like once you think you're aligned, you could probably align some more. At least for me, I just feel like I'll take some steps into doing something for some time where I'm like, I feel like I'm really aligned. Like it feels true to me. Like I feel like, my schedule's working. I feel like this is working and that's working. But then somehow along the way, it's like I'll fall into some old pattern
Mm-hmm.
and it creates that friction. I think one of the things you also speak about is like stop creating so much friction for yourself and going against the grain. Again, it's like
Yeah.
we need the wave.
Yeah, because trying to fit yourself in a box, in any kind of box that you have outgrown or you're too big for, really hurts. It feels awful. And a lot of us have been there.
Hmm.
And it's equally hard stepping out and being yourself and risk feeling like the black sheep or a pariah. But the other side of it is exhilarating. It's so worth it to find your rhythms. And it is a balance too, because I think there's this idea that like you said, alignment is having the perfect schedule and figuring it out and being like, I have accomplished this, check. But that's also not the point. It's about the balance, because we have to stop treating ourselves like projects, because we're just supposed to be humans experiencing. And personal growth and self-help are great and important. And our generation has a lot of stuff to heal because our parents and grandparents' generation didn't do anything about it. But my favorite thing is telling people that you need to come up for water, sit on the grass, and eat some pizza, because not everything is meant to be fixed and healed and perfect. And then we find ourselves bouncing back and forth between extremes of, oh, I go to the gym every day, I have a perfect 5 a.m. morning routine, blah, 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 blah. It's like, that's not sustainable either. You have to have
No.
balance. And some people are truly not meant to wake up at 5 a.m. Just throwing that out there. Like,
Yeah.
you can sit here and say, like, that's what you need to do to be successful. And some people, that is just not the case at all.
Oh, it's not the case for me.
No.
Can I do it if I'm forced to? Sure. Do I feel good when that happens? Absolutely not.
No, I used to wake up to go to 5 a.m. cycle bar when I lived in Dallas, and I would throw up after every class. And the instructor was like, maybe you should eat something. So then I would eat like a banana and I would just throw up. I was like, this is violently going against everything that my body stands for.
Do you like to sleep in? Are you a night owl?
I am a night owl and I love to sleep in.
Yeah,
Like, I
same.
get such a wave of energy at like between 5 to 9,
Yes. Is that an air sign thing?
probably. Like, the brain is now active. It's like you've been doing stuff all day. Now it's like, oh, this is exciting. What kind of random Wikipedia rabbit hole can I get into today and pretend like I'm being productive?
Totally. There's always the project that starts at 9 p.m. and you're like, why? Why am I
Yeah.
doing this? But it's fine if you don't have to wake up early the next morning.
Yeah, if you could stay up till 3 a.m. working on it, I'll sleep till 10.
It's perfect.
Yeah. But I do have to have some restraints around it and be like, okay, like, I have to get up at 8. I need to go to sleep by midnight. So we do have to have boundaries sometimes to like keep ourselves healthy, even though we have natural inclinations and desires towards things. Happy medium again.
That's true. That's true. I'm very much also on the like midnight to 8 a.m. And
Yeah.
sometimes I remind myself of like, wow, we've come so far because it used to be the 5 a.m. to, well, it's still pretty late, 11 p.m. Now we get a full 8 hours or 9 hours of sleep.
Which is hot. Like,
Yeah,
sleeping 8 hours is hot. That is successful. That is rich bitch energy.
totally.
People telling you that you need to wake up at 5 a.m. to be successful,
Outdated.
do not listen to them.
No,
I don't trust anything that they would tell me.
they came straight out of the 4 Hour Work Week book.
Pass.
Pass. When we think about people, notable figures maybe, that you think use astrology for launches, I've heard some talk about Taylor Swift, for example. Her fan base thinks she's very like tapped into astrology
100%.
based off of when she chooses to do things.
Mm.
Who are some people who you think are like definitely using astrology for business, even though they're not saying so?
Hmm. Well, I work with a lot of people under NDA that you
Okay.
probably know, who are well-known figures who are using astrology for business, and I can't say.
Okay.
But this is one of those moments you have to trust
Yes.
that they're doing it. When it comes to mega celebrities, one recent example is Paris Hilton. I went to her live show in Hollywood, and the day that she chose was absolutely so random. It was a Wednesday night, and I looked at how it aligned with her chart, and I was like, this was a chosen time. this had to be
Wow.
elected.
What did you
And
see in
she's
her
an
chart?
Aquarius.
Yeah.
I can't even remember now, but it was like something was activating her like fifth house of performance. And the moon, I think the moon was in Aquarius, which is her sun sign. And so that would be a huge illumination. Just the fact that it was, if something's done on kind of a random day,
Mm-hmm.
there's something behind it. If you see someone launch something on a new or a full moon, that's orchestrated.
Mm-hmm.
I wish the U.S. government would embody this. I know there are some governments around the world, particularly in Europe, South America, who are suspected and have used astrology in the past. I don't think we've had astrology in the White House since Reagan. I could be wrong. But the last election was a shit show because it was on the day that Mercury retrograde either started or ended. And that's why there was so much confusion around ballots being collected. And there was just so much drama for weeks on end. And I was like, this is not good.
Yeah, we could have saved ourselves a lot of heartburn
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't a retrograde moment,
Yeah.
to put it lightly.
Yeah.
Have you heard the Taylor Swift theories though? Because I know that
Yeah.
you
100%.
are tapped into what she's doing.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm like all into all the Taylor conspiracies.
Yeah,
I won't go on record, but yeah, all of them. I believe all of
me
them.
too.
And the fact that she's using astrology just doesn't even surprise me in the least. I think a lot of pop stars are using it.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of guys like that have like the crypto kind of businesses, like crypto guys tend to love astrology.
interesting.
And there's been some crazy crypto trends with astrology too, correlating with in 2020 with the big Bitcoin bust. It was when Jupiter and Saturn were together in Aquarius. So Aquarius is like the sign that would represent all things new age and crypto and, Bitcoin, blockchain, all these things that you are difficult to explain to your grandmother. Very Aquarian.
Yeah,
And there's patterns related to these transits in and out, retrogrades and not, and then Pluto into Aquarius and then retrograding out. I mean, I don't think crypto is done at all.
mm-hmm.
Wait till it goes back into Aquarius in January of 2024. This is not financial advice.
Yep. I love the Paris Hilton concert example. One, because I had so much FOMO and I was so happy to find out that you were there because iconic, like through and through. And also, I do remember the fact that it was on a Wednesday. I was like,
Yeah,
that's interesting. But I read her memoir and she mentions her big three in the first like 10 pages of the book.
there's your sign. Celebrities who talk about their big three are usually using it more than what they might let on
Oh,
to.
you think?
I think so. I think you have to have a certain level of curiosity and knowledge to use the term big three and apply it. Most people are going to know their sun sign. That's not very telling.
Sure. You're giving us like the secret language. It's like if they reveal the big three, they're astrology girlies.
They know
They
things.
know things. They're smart.
Or if it's a guy, he's been traumatized by an astrology
He's had
girly.
an ex who's who's forced him to produce the birth chart.
Yeah, I've seen those memes. Stop talking to that girl right now.
Yeah. Eh,
Whatever. She's encouraging him to be introspective and aligned with nature. Pop off, mom.
absolutely. So aside from our very popular tech entrepreneurs and our favorite celebrities, who should really consider applying astrology to business?
I mean, my short answer is everyone.
Mm-hmm.
The more detailed answer is, especially if you're in the seedling phase, this is a really valuable way to create more soundness and structure. If you're in the phase of like, I need to create a brand book, like what is it that, what are the foundations that we come back on? That's a good time to start employing this. If you've been in business for 5 years and you're like, I want to scale and I want to, create more balance in my life and grow this team, I want to grow my team in alignment, you might want to consider using astrology to not necessarily discriminate when you're hiring. I don't think that there's value in that. But I think getting to know the people that you're working with, if you're growing a team, Astrology is invaluable and so much more than that stupid disc assessment. I think everyone can benefit. And the more control that you have on your business, like let's say if you are starting out in the beginning, first few years, that is the best time to employ it.
Mm,
Because once it gets too big and there's a board involved, it's harder to make these changes structurally. So you
right.
want to go in and be like, from the ground up, this business is built on this structure and these values and these foundations that are in alignment with the founder and the purpose of the business. Because businesses have a birth chart. They do.
Mm,
And I reflect on mine quite a bit. Not as much as I would do my own birth chart,
mm-hmm.
but I think there is validity in that of like what is the soul of the business based on the time it was created. So you want to reflect on that too, especially if you already have the business. If you don't, and you're like, I want an aligned chart, you can elect a time that is the beginning of your business for the most auspicious outcome. Same thing goes with weddings.
Wow. Wow. We're gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to have you help me figure out my business's
Yeah,
birth
I
chart.
need to look at yours. Hmm.
Yeah. That'll be our next session. I can't wait.
Okay. And then you can kind of parent your business like you would a child. Like if you were a parent and you're getting to know your child's birth chart, which you should,
Mm, yeah.
as a way to guide them to become their true selves, you can think of your business birth chart as like the same. You're like parenting it to help it come into full bloom.
Wow.
And I think it's why businesses have a lot of businesses have problems at year 7 or even shut down because that's the business's first Saturn square. A lot of relationships have like a 7-year itch,
I've heard
and it's
that.
the first Saturn square. So if you make it through the first Saturn square of your business or your relationship, you're doing pretty good.
That's fascinating. So I know that you help people one on one with various sessions that I'm a frequent fan of. But I want you to tell me about your new Astrology for Business program opportunity because it sounds incredible. And I'm like seriously considering enrolling. But I think it's going to help people really apply everything that we've chatted about today. So, what's the rundown on In Tune Entrepreneur?
This is the turnkey, in depth, everything that we've talked about applied to you and tailored to your phase of business. It's your brand, your messaging, your audience, your offers, the structure, your workflow, how you should structure things based on the quarters, what you should focus on for the next 5 years based on you and your business. It is all of those things broken down into 8 weeks because I used to I used to do a lot of business birth chart readings, and that's like a little tune up. It's like an hour and a half session. We can kind of talk high level about some of these things, and there's a lot of value there. But this is the let's go through this together and actually create the change of all these things that we're uncovering with handholding and accountability and the brand book, the strong foundation of everything that you need to run your business in alignment with who you really are so that you don't have to keep showing up in a box and trying to throw spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, because you know for sure with confidence how you're supposed to do it, what you're supposed to do, who you're supposed to serve, what it's supposed to look like and feel like and sound like, and when you should feel unapologetic about taking off. There's probably a link in the show notes that will give you a lot of information. And if you're curious and want to know if it's right for you, send me a message and we can always have a no pressure, always zero pressure chat on Zoom so I can get to know you and your business and see where it's at. And we can tailor everything to make sure that you get exactly what you need out of our time together. So send me a message on my website, on Instagram.
Yes, we will link all of the need to know details for KJ and this program in the show notes. And that's an offer, my friends, that I would not pass up. Chatting with KJ is like the best possible offer in general. So,
Aw,
KJ, I love having you here on the podcast. I appreciate your wisdom. Thank you for being here.
I love being here and I just love you. Thank
I
you.
love you too. Is there anything else that you want to share today that we didn't cover?
Don't forget to look up.
That was directed right at me. I've got neck problems because I'm always looking down.
Go look at the stars. Go see the magic all around you.
Go look at
Zoom
the
out.
stars. All right. KJ, thank you so, so, so much. I appreciate your time, and we'll have to do another chat because there's always more astrology to talk about.
Always down. Thanks for having me.
Listen to the More Pod every Wednesday as I share the things that make me more me and discover a thing or two to make you more you.